Well, thank you, and good to speak with you all today. We're going to talk about Net Promoter. Now, we only have about 15 minutes. I could talk about Net Promoter for hours. The research is extensive. The thinking behind the methodology is comprehensive. We just don't have that much time. But what I will tell you is that as the founder and president of Satrix Solutions, we are a sponsor of the Totango conference. So we are proudly have a booth in the exhibitor expo today. Feel free to stop by after lunch if you want to chat more, and we can dig in as deep as you'd like to get. So Satrix Solutions, briefly, we are, in fact, the only sponsor that is a professional services firm. We're a consulting organization, and we help companies to maximize the ROI and the impact of their customer feedback and customer success programs. So if you think about your maturity level in your customer success program, whether you're just starting out, we can help. Whether you're at a certain level and you feel like you've stalled, we can help. Or whether you believe there's just more that we can be doing with this. And there's a listing of some of the services that we engage with our clients, but certainly a number of areas that we can help you. So feel free to stop by if you want to talk in more detail. Now, as we dig in, I was thinking, look, this is the second day of the conference. We're the second to last discussion that you've had. So you've probably learned it all. You've heard it all at this point. What new can I share with you that you haven't heard already? Not an easy thing to do for a presenter at the very last session, essentially, of the two-day conference. So we dug deep, and we did find something. I can't promise this is going to be a lot of value for you. But what we did establish is that there is a very high correlation between the number of customer success professionals and the net worth of the Kardashian empire. So really interesting correlation there. You can see the best fit. Now, we're still digging in further on what this means and how this is going to help you. Maybe at next year's conference, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So that's the one big takeaway from today. Okay, let's get serious for a moment. There's been a lot of talk about these elements right here. This is how we drive growth using Net Promoter. This is how we drive growth in our daily roles as customer success professionals. We focus heavily on retention, referrals, renewals, lifetime value, upsell, cross-sell, close rates, reputation. You've heard all of this ad nauseum over the last day and a half. So I don't need to convince you. This is the business that we're in. We're all very passionate about it. What I will say is that, as we've heard, if you are able to move the needle on any or all of those KPIs, then certainly you're going to drive revenue and profit growth. And we all know the studies that have been out there. Bain did a study years ago that shows just a single-digit improvement in retention can have dramatic improvements in profitability. In some cases, 25 to 100% improvement in profitability just by moving the needle only slightly around retention. So we recognize that if we can do good things in these areas, then it will have business results. We will be able to drive improvements in profitability and revenue. And what has also been discussed, and I believe we are all in line and in agreement on, is that it will improve the valuation of your organization. So companies that don't do this, let's say hypothetically a SaaS company might trade at 1.5 times or 2 times revenue or EBITDA. However, if you have exceptional retention, upsell, cross-sell, renewals, all the things that we're focused on, you can very easily trade at 2 or 3 times revenue or 2 or 3 times profits. And by the way, this has been substantiated, and this is one of the great things about working in this industry over the last 10 years. In the last 5, more and more venture capital firms, more and more private equity firms, more Wall Street firms are talking about this. They have recognized it. They are in appreciation that this is areas that business need to focus on. And so this wasn't the case 5 years ago. If you look at public company earnings releases, the discussion around Net Promoter is much more prominent than it ever used to be. And we work with several private companies that have raised funding, private equity, have gone public, and they are achieving higher valuations thanks to the work that they are doing around this. So valuation can absolutely be impacted when you focus in these areas. Now let me gauge the room here. We're survey experts, so I have to ask a survey question. Show of hands. How would you characterize your opinion of NPS? Raise your hand if you're generally favorable towards NPS. Okay, most of the people. Generally unfavorable towards NPS. A couple of people, and then no opinion. Don't know yet. Okay, which is interesting because we, there's been a lot of discussion and debate around Net Promoter and what it means, and is it really good? Is it really a legitimate metric to track? A lot of research firms trying to poke holes in it. So sometimes we have to confront this discussion about, well, is Net Promoter legit? Should I even be tracking it? And I'm glad to see most of you guys are on board that it absolutely is a strong KPI and that it should be adopted by business-to-business organizations. And we're going to talk about how you should think about that, because there are dynamics and nuances that are very different than how the construct and the methodology originally evolved. So for those of you who are not familiar, and I believe most of you are, Net Promoter is how likely are you to recommend your company to a friend or colleague? So that's the survey question, and Net Promoter is based on that question. And I won't go into all the research because we don't have the time. The scale from a 0 to 10, not at all likely to extremely likely. And you have your promoters, passives, and detractors. Your score is derived by percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors. Now, the one thing I want to point out on this slide that you may not know is the acronym NPS and what it refers to, because most people believe it refers to Net Promoter Score. And originally that was the case. However, it has now evolved. And in fact, we refer to it as the Net Promoter System. And there's a significant distinction there. This is an operational discipline. It's a way of doing business. It's a way of engaging with your customers. It's a culture building exercise. It is a system that your entire organization should rally around. It is not a score. It is not a metric. It is not a number. If you are focused on the number or the KPI, then you are missing out on a lot of the benefits associated with the Net Promoter System. So 5 things about Net Promoter that you may not know. And maybe we'll take a survey at the end to see how many of these you didn't know about. But the first thing is, it's okay to have more than 2 questions. Again, this is a holdover from the initial construct. And frankly, I think Fred Reichheld and Bain did a little bit of disservice. You know, they were marketing. Let's give them credit. The very first written material around Net Promoter was entitled "The One Number You Need to Know to Grow," right? And his first book was The Ultimate Question. So the implication there was that it was very simple. All you need to do is ask these 2 questions: how likely are you to recommend, and tell us why. And that was it. However, in a B2B construct, in the environment that we all exist, it is perfectly acceptable, in fact strongly encouraged, that you extend beyond Net Promoter and you ask other questions. Now, I'm not suggesting a 10-minute survey that your customers will not respond to. I'm simply saying if you ask 5 or 10 questions and it takes 1 minute to complete instead of 15 seconds to complete, that's okay. Your customers have a vested interest in your success. They are allocating resources to your product or service. They will take 60 or 90 seconds to respond to a survey. With an additional set of questions, you can get drilled down in certain attributes. Why do your customers love you? What are their pain points or frustrations? And then you can uncover key driver analysis. What are the attributes that are highly correlated with customer loyalty? So if you go beyond 2 questions, there's a lot more impactful, valuable, actionable insight you can derive from your survey. Again, I caution, we don't want high drop-off rates, and we monitor that closely for our clients. We don't want to ask them for 5 or 10 minutes of their time and have this be an overly burdensome exercise. But we have seen almost no distinction or difference between a 2-question Net Promoter survey and one that maybe has 5 or 7 questions. They will complete it. Number 2, it should benefit everyone across the organization. And this is a common problem with any feedback program. The feedback from your customers gets siloed. It gets shared with maybe 1 or 2 departments, and very few people, other people see it. Maybe it's shared in a format of Excel spreadsheet, and people don't take the time to review it. So what you see here is that every department should be leveraging the insights from your customers. The C-suite, of course, is going to care. The board is going to care. Product development should absolutely be reviewing this for roadmap, future functionality, feedback. Of course, the customer success organization. Sales and marketing should be chomping at the bit to get the feedback from your customers. What resonates in the market? What do they see as your differentiators? What should they be using maybe as far as language to help to convey a compelling message to the target market? And human resources should be relying upon this feedback to understand how should they be hiring? What are the people they should be adding to the team? What behaviors and attributes are your customers most appreciative of? So this is something that's really powerful, but it needs to be distributed across the organization, converted in a way that's meaningful and relevant to them, and made available to cascade it all the way down through the organization. Net Promoter System is a culture building exercise as much as it is anything else. And I get the question often, well, when should we start doing this work? When should I maybe launch or field my first Net Promoter survey? Day one is really the answer. Now, of course, if you don't have customers, you don't have anyone to survey. But you should start the discussion internally very early on. All startups should be building that culture. Do we care about customer satisfaction? Do we want to deliver a differentiated service experience? These are the types of the dialogue that should be discussed on a regular basis, year-round with the company. So if you think about your company values, how you hire, how you train, the attitudes and behaviors of your people, how you engage your employees, the rewards and recognition program, all need to be included and thought through with regard to the Net Promoter System. And it can help inform a lot of these decisions. So the culture that you're building is one that's going to meet or exceed the brand promise that you deliver to your customers. It will supercharge your Totango install. So we're sponsors. We needed to put this one up there, right? Now, for those of you who are getting feedback about usage of your software, think about now you can overlay customer input on top of how they're using, how they're interacting from a support ticket perspective. So it's yet another, it's another bit of information and insight that you can then leverage and look at your entire customer journey and all the touch points they have with your company. So it should definitely overlay all of the wonderful data and analytics that you're garnering through Totango. And then the final comment I'll make, and this is really more of a caution, because and this is somewhat of a byproduct of like the Survey Monkeys of the world, right? There's a lot of free software tools out there. Everybody all of a sudden thinks they're an expert in how to design and field a survey. And Net Promoter, if adopted by just a 2-question, you could obviously just mimic what the Net Promoter survey question is, and you'll be okay. But do your homework. In a B2B organization, there are complexities and there are nuances to it. And garbage in, garbage out. We've heard it all, right? Everybody's heard that lingo. If you are relying upon bad data, potentially misleading data, you could be doing your organization a great disservice. So I'm not saying it's overly difficult or complex, because thousands of companies have adopted Net Promoter. It's just not as simple as it might seem on the surface level. So do your homework and think about it, or of course call us and we'll be happy to chat with you about it as well. So that's all I had for you today. I think we have time for Q&A, if I'm not mistaken. I will say one last thing. My colleagues are in the back there. We have these wonderful chocolate cell phones. If you haven't gotten one, please take one on the way out. So it's good dark chocolate. It's healthy for you, too. So do we have any time for Q&A, I think? Yeah. We have a couple of minutes. Christine, do you want to come up and we'll take, if anybody has any questions? Yes.
How often do you suggest a Net Promoter Score survey be sent?
So question, how often do you suggest Net Promoter should be sent? And I hate to give the answer, it depends. The one comment I'll make, you want to be very wary of survey fatigue. So of course, too much is no good. We generally recommend semi-annual, every 6 months, but that could take a number of different forms. So you can create different waves, or you can draw a line in the sand in everyone at 6-month intervals. We think once a year is too infrequent, quarterly is too much, but there's also a lot of variations. Question.
Do you have any particular question that you find is the most important to ask customers? I know it obviously depends on your industry, but.
So are there any questions that are some of the most important or valuable? And it is very unique and specific to the company. Our clients feel there is huge value and benefit in seeing what the perception of them relative to other companies in the space. So we sort of ask a question formulated around how they're perceived versus the competitive landscape. And you're probably not going to list the competitors, but in general, the value that they receive from the product, the experience that they have with the service or customer success team. There's a high correlation between the team interactions and trust and with the overall perception of your company. So those are a few.
I
Do you
on
want-
the feedback that you gave us with the why, customers would rate us on a certain scale, and then they would also answer why. And to my point with the qualitative data, I found that to be invaluable.
Yeah, the analysis of your text-based feedback is critical. That's the
Yeah.
richest feedback. A lot of people just can't comb through it because it's a lot of work. But
Yeah.
do that work because that's where you're going to find
It's
really
full of
interesting.
gems.
Yeah.
Do
Question.
you ever want to send NPS to more than 1% of companies? So, like, my actual end users are very technical, the IT, the developers, but the people signing the checks are much higher. So, who do I send it to? The person signing the check or the person using it every single day?
Right. Great question. That's one of the nuances of Net Promoter in a B2B environment. In our view, send it to everybody. The survey should go to everybody who has an ability to influence the decision or the perception of your organization. However, you identify the different roles.
Yeah.
So we know who the decision maker is, we know who the influencers are, we know who the users are, and we can segment that data once all of the customer feedback is in. But we think, why limit, right? Doesn't cost you any more to add context to the survey invite list. So get all of the feedback, and then you could do all your analysis after the fact. And we did that with Anography as well.
Yeah, and it was very useful to know like who you were and what you said was very useful in the input. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Thank you all very much for your time. Appreciate it.